balance. Let not your heart be troubled. There she is. All right, what wiseacre?
I find your show to be so annoying, and I'm going to have another gin and tonic now. Oh, no.
Oh, Laura, hi.
Oh, hey. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you guys didn't tell me I was on.
I told you you'd make a headline on media, and you did. We can predict it.
Well, by the way,
did you watch this press conference today? Did you see this?
Sean, I think all of the media people should have to reveal their own physical and mental health after that, because they're the ones who have problems.
Truckload of Xanax, and if they can't afford it, I'll help them get the psychiatric counseling they all obviously need.
Oh no, it was. I don't know if there's any credibility left in any of those people after that. That actually
unhinged.
Surprised me, and that takes a lot at this point.
All right, take
Sean,
it away.
All right,
Good
Sean,
show
thanks so much. All right, and good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle. We have an unbelievable show for you tonight, chock full. I don't know how we're going to get through it, but we'll do it. We have an unbelievable lineup of guests. Of course, we got Monica Crowley, Juan Williams, Corey Lewandowski. They'll all weigh in. Oh, we're using weigh in. Isn't that fun? The Democrats' latest plan to derail the Trump train. Good luck with that. We also have Marco Rubio's take on the brewing fight over a DACA compromise. And John Bolton is here with the dramatic details of a call between President Trump and President Xi of China. Could a confrontation be brewing? And a Democrat who's known Donald Trump since the Nixon administration tells us why the president is no racist. But we begin with liberal stunts versus conservative solutions. That's the topic of tonight's angle. Today was a day of histrionics and hyperbole on Capitol Hill as the DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was interrogated by senators on the Judiciary Committee. If C-SPAN handed out Best Supporting Actor awards, a gold statuette would surely go to New Jersey Senator Cory Booker.
Why am I, frankly, seething with anger? The commander-in-chief, in an Oval Office meeting, referring to people from African countries and Haitians with the most vile and vulgar language. The language festers. Your silence and your amnesia is complicity. The fact pattern is clear of the threats in this country. I hurt. When Dick Durbin called me, I had tears of rage when I heard about this experience in that meeting. And for you not to feel that hurt and that pain and to dismiss some of the questions of my colleagues, that's unacceptable to me.
Tears of rage? That's actually bad acting. Give me a break. Now, did Senator Booker cry tears of rage when this story broke in his home state of New Jersey just a few months ago, where an illegal alien named Edgar Mendoza broke into a Trenton home and raped a 6-year-old little girl? Now, we looked and we couldn't find a single comment by Senator Booker about this heinous crime of unspeakable cruelty. Does he not feel the hurt of the child's mother and father? A crime that should have never happened because that man should have never been in this country, Senator. His silence is unacceptable and complicit, at least to me. Booker is simply out testing campaign themes. It's patently obvious. Oprah had her moment at the Golden Globes, and he's not about to cede that spotlight that quickly. No way. Here he was back in 2010, joking around with private citizen Trump. Seems pretty happy to be sitting with a racist, doesn't he? Booker's stunt today was an attempt to reinforce that Trump is a racist narrative. We've been seeing it all week. And for backup, 5 liberal congressmen and women are staging their own stunt. They're boycotting Trump's State of the Union speech. Now, what does that accomplish other than maybe give them another free night to binge watch on Netflix? And speaking of wasting time, the left-wing American press willingly lined up to do what they do best: play the hallelujah chorus to the Democrat storyline. For them, slandering the president beats reporting on his great economy anytime. Facts be damned.
The president is a white supremacist.
That is absolutely racism with steroids.
The president of the United States is racist.
We have a racist, a shameless racist who has hijacked the Republican Party, who has hijacked the Oval Office.
I would say, judging by his words and his deeds, racist. A hard rain is going to fall on Donald Trump and the Republicans who enable this sort of racism.
Oh, so tiresome. Then a positively bizarre scene unfolded at the White House briefing today by the president's physician. Members of the media actually think that a military doctor is part of the White House scheme to conceal the president's true mental condition from all of us.
There isn't anything that's a part of the president's health records or his overall physical fitness or any medications that he's taking that you're not permitted to tell us. Is there anything you're keeping from us for privacy reasons?
If anyone ever needed extensive cognitive screening, my goodness, what medications are you on, Acosta? Now, there were endless questions about Trump's diet, his workout routine or lack thereof. Wouldn't you like to see that routine? His weight. And one reporter asked the doctor for his waist measurements. You first, sweetheart. Then this afternoon, a member of NBC's investigative unit tweeted out this gem, seeing a lot of skepticism over the idea that real Donald Trump weighs only 239 pounds. Would he step on a scale in public to prove it? Yeah, he'll do that when reporters and anchors agree to public lie detector tests during their broadcasts or after their broadcasts. As Trump's team is renegotiating NAFTA, freeing up our energy sector, smashing ISIS, cracking down on MS-13, all the rest, the Democrats and a gaggle of globalist never-Trumpers, and of course everybody in the media, are making complete and total buffoons of themselves. It's actually embarrassing. No self-respect. Because of their phony, politicized bluster on race, what's going to happen? I'll tell you what's going to happen. More Americans will end up tuning them out. And sadly, in the process, tuning out real racism when it happens. And if Democrats really decide to put amnesty for illegal immigrants ahead of funding the government for American citizens, they'll have blown yet another opportunity to be a party of solutions instead of stunts. Ronald Reagan once said that governments have a tendency not to solve problems, only to rearrange them. Well, eager to change that sad reality, the Trump administration is actually working to expand economic opportunity for all Americans and also solve complicated problems along the way. I ask you this. What other president has stood up to China and its theft of American intellectual property and its myriad of unscrupulous trade practices? Name one. And what other president has begun to bring capital and manufacturing back to the United States? They all said it was impossible, right? Trump didn't believe them. And what other president has insisted on immigration changes that will benefit working class Americans instead of just benefiting the wealthy, all of those rich people who want their cheap labor? He is doing this and enduring constant, nonstop, unfair, nasty criticism. And he's doing it for one simple reason: to improve the standard of living for the American people, people of all races and at every economic level. And while it is true that President Trump can sometimes step on his own good news, sometimes, of course, saying nothing is the best thing, and maybe you should abide by that once in a while, he's actually trying to do what so many politicians have promised but could not deliver: a better, stronger, and yes, a more united America. My friends, I will take solutions over stunts any day of the week. And that's the angle. Now let's get into all of this with our superb panel of guests. In New York is Monica Crowley, Senior Fellow at the London Center for Policy Research, and Juan Williams. You see him at 5 p.m. every night as co-host of FNC's The Five. And with me here in Washington is Corey Lewandowski, former Trump campaign manager, author of the fabulous New York Times bestselling book, Let Trump Be Trump. Okay, Juan, I want you to have the first crack at this. Where did I go wrong? Because I imagine you have a long list. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think you're in a difficult position. You know, I love you, but I just think that it's hard to defend Trump. But you did a terrific job of trying. On the race front, I mean, it's hard for a guy who began his campaign, I mean, even before he was running, as a birther, and then is known to say that fine people are marching with white supremacists in Charlottesville, and now this latest S-hole comment. It's just kind of hard. But I think that you're making the case that, you know, there are a lot of good things happening. The press doesn't pay attention. So I listen to you, but on the race stuff, I think it's a little bit hard for you.
And Corey, you've known Trump for a while now. I've known him for about 14, 15 years. My view here is, if this guy was some secret racist, man, he did a really good job of hiding it all those years. I mean, he was hanging out with Jesse Jackson, donated a building for him to put his Rainbow Push Coalition in, pictures of him, you know, glad-handing with Al Sharpton, but we're supposed to believe now it's all out in the open he's a secret racist?
Well, and don't forget, Don King was campaigning with the candidate on the campaign trail, and I don't think Don King ever accused Mr. Trump of being a racist. But the amazing thing is, right, people don't want to give Donald Trump the credit that he has seen in the election. Don't forget, it was just before the election. CNN said Donald Trump would get less than 1% of the African-American vote. He actually got a higher percentage of the African-American vote than any candidate since Bob Dole in 1996. Look what he's done for the African-American community. Lowest unemployment in African-American right now ever recorded, right? That's not racism. That's about being America first and putting everybody back to work. It's not a racist issue when you're putting people back to work and you're stopping illegal aliens from coming into the country and killing Americans.
Monica, here's the problem with the racism charge is, once you say racist, it kind of shuts down dialogue, and it kills goodwill. I wouldn't be up here doing what I'm doing every night if I thought Donald Trump was a racist. I take that charge very seriously, and I would not do it. But for him to endure this day after day after day, regardless of any of the good things that are happening, to me, says a lot more about the people accusing him than it does about what's in this man's heart.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we make a mistake when we play according to the narrative that the media wants us to play on, when they want us to play on their turf, and they're defining all of the rules of the debate and the conversation. Donald Trump represents an existential threat to them in the media, to the establishment on both sides of the aisle. Therefore, he has to be destroyed. So the media is going down this long list to try to destroy him, and of course nothing is working. So first he was a Russian colluder, and then he was mentally ill, and then he was a racist, and now they're down, Laura, to does the guy wear dentures? I mean, they are so desperate. They are like stalking him like psychopaths. They're not covering him the way they're supposed to, because they're trying everything. They are throwing the kitchen sink at him in order to try to warp the narrative among the American people to see him in a way that they don't see him. They see him as somebody bringing real results, concrete improvements to their actual lives, economically, politically, culturally, etc. They cannot stand it. And you know what, Laura? I think what drives the media so crazy, what makes them so furious, is that when he tweets and when he speaks, he's actually beating them at their own game, and they cannot stand it.
You know, he reminds me of kind of the whole Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote cartoon, one of my favorite cartoons, where, you know, Wile E. Coyote has like that Acme TNT thing. He's going to blow him up, he's going to catch him on the cliff, then he's going to get him around the corner, and it's like, meep, meep, and he just takes off, and then they can't. I'm good at voices, by the way. Let's talk about Cory Booker, Juan. He's someone who I think people looked at for many years as kind of a centrist Democrat. I've gotten to know him very, you know, casually years ago when people were hailing him as a new type of Democrat. And today he put on what I think was quite a performance in the interrogation of the DHS secretary. He conjured up all of this, the tears of rage, the I'm so outraged, how could you say this, as if he's never sat at a Senate hearing where a cabinet member actually defends the President of the United States. He acted like this DHS secretary was complicit in, you know, marching with the KKK. I found it a low point for him, and I found that he had lost a lot of credibility with a lot of people.
Well, so here's where I agree with you. I thought it was theatrical. But let me also say that I think as a U.S. senator, as a politician, I think it was incumbent upon him to say, hey, DHS Secretary, you were in the room, and somehow you can't remember. You say that there was bad language. Even people say, well, what bad language did you hear? That's what Dick Durbin, the senator from Illinois, who has said that the president said, the SO comment said to her, so what bad language did you hear? She said this on Fox News Sunday. She couldn't answer. So she clearly was, as you describe her, defending the president.
So what? Why should it be? Why should a cabinet member have to reveal anything about a private conversation?
Well, fine, because
in
it was
the
on
Oval Office with the president? I find this whole thing to be one big distraction.
Here you're going off the rails because
they're losing on all this stuff.
Who's the one that keeps changing the story, Laura? The White House. The White House did not deny that he said it initially. Then they come back and the president says,
I don't care if he did say it.
I didn't say it. Then the White House says, well, maybe he said a different kind of profanity with regard. But the point is the same. He's saying black people from Africa, from Haiti, brown people from El Salvador, we don't want them in the lottery. We don't need people from these countries.
He did not say the people. He said the countries, and describing it as Lindsey Graham described Mexico and Central America. Lindsey Graham said hell.
We're not letting countries in. We're letting people, human beings who have talent and who've been admitted to this country as the Irish, the Italians, the Jews, the Catholics, and they have made America great
right now. When Obama used similar language to describe a Middle Eastern country, does that make him racist? Does that make him insensitive?
No, he wasn't saying keep out people from those countries. Did he say keep out people from that Middle Eastern country?
I see. It's describing a whole country filled with people.
You can describe a corrupt government. You can describe a failed economic system, but you should not talk about people that way.
Juan, you were discriminated against at NPR for your viewpoint. And that was horrible what they did to you.
Thank you. Yep,
they didn't treat you fairly, and you wrote a great book about it. But I loved your book. That was so unfair. And I think it's a similar thing what's happening now. It's not viewpoint discrimination. It is discrimination in a way against a president's record of early success. It's still early, but early success in totally deviating from the truth of the facts. We're getting to whether, he's fat now, and we haven't even gotten into that, Corey. Now the press at the White House today, well, does he really weigh 239? Get on a scale. I've seen it all now.
Look, the outrage over every single thing that this president has done is so overblown. Now they're calling into question a medical doctor who also performed the same exact tests on Barack Obama and George W. Bush. But now they're calling into question, are you giving us all the information? Does he really weigh 239? Does he wear dentures? What else are you not telling us? Look, you know what the greatest part was? This guy gets on television and says...
They're nuts. These people in the press room have gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They're crazy.
Laura, he gets on television and he says Trump has amazing genes. He's got great genes. That's amazing.
He's probably in better health than most of those people who sit on their duff all day and or they exercise like at a 90-minute spin class, and they're
Laura,
like, oh, I'm in good shape.
You know what, Laura?
I'm sorry.
JFK had all kinds of serious illnesses. He was a walking horror show of pills and injections. We never heard about that. Barack Obama was a smoker. I never heard any kind of comments about what kind of risk that might be to the president of the United States. They are raising the bar for Donald Trump because they've got to find some sort of cudgel to destroy this man. And the fact that he is still standing upright, carrying out his duties as president,
and
is
drinking his Diet Coke, by golly.
He works 19 hours a day, every day.
And I think we should all have a bucket of chicken and a couple of Big Macs to celebrate that health report.
I think we have to have what is it? He likes Starburst, so he can't have dentures.
Yeah, that Starburst will pull out your fillings.
That's what I think.
Now getting into hell with ISIS and what China's doing. Let's focus on the Starburst. Oh my gosh! And you guys, you're such a great panel. Thank you so much. And by the way, Mitt Romney in the Senate. Oh, we have a Romney coming up that really does like President Trump quite a bit. We're going to ask some very interesting questions of a potential Romney run from a relative. Don't go away. Mitt Romney is considering a run for the Senate, raising the question, would he be more of an ally or an adversary of President Trump? Romney delivered a scathing speech during the 2016 presidential campaign, calling then candidate Trump a phony and a fraud. That was just the nice stuff, who's been playing the American public for suckers. But our next guest, who knows both men pretty well, says Romney is no never-Trumper. Ronna McDaniel is both Romney's niece and the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee. Ronna, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Always good to be here.
Okay, so what's Mitt going to do? This is the big question. Number one.
So my advice.
Inside scoop here.
Inside scoop. I don't ask him what he's going to do.
Oh, come on.
So I can come on shows and say I have no idea. I don't even ask my dad. I'm not fun on that front. But I will say my advice to any Republican is spend your time focusing on the Democrats. Look at Schumer, look at Pelosi, look what they'd do if they were holding the reins of this country, where our country would be today. Focus on them. Stop focusing on the Republicans. I always say, if you have a problem in your family, don't go on Jerry Springer. And this president's doing a great job. We should be supporting him.
But he did send out this tweet right after the S-hole controversy, comment controversy. He said, the poverty of an aspiring immigrant's nation of origin is as irrelevant as their race. The sentiment attributed to POTUS, the president, is inconsistent with America's history and antithetical to American values. May our memory of Dr. King buoy our hope for unity, greatness, and charity of all. That was a dig at the president, Ronna.
Well, we've seen many different accounts come from this meeting. The president has said it's been totally misrepresented. I take the president's word at that.
So you're taking the president over Uncle Mitt, correct?
The president was in the meeting, so yeah, I take the president's word at what he said. He's representing himself, and he's talking about better immigration, better borders, focusing on things that are going to help make this country safer and great again.
You know, I keep thinking of the senators and congressmen who opposed Trump, who happen to be Republicans. It hasn't worked out so well for them. I mean, Boehner is gone. You know, he was kind of middle. But, you know, Flake is on his way out. Corker was kind of in and out. He's gone. I mean, I don't see the play here. Like, oh, I'm going to be a never-Trumper. Okay, I guess. I mean, but I don't even know where that gets you.
So what are you going to be against? Lower unemployment, more jobs, a better economy? I mean, look at where our country is a year into this Trump administration. We are humming. We're on the right track. This is a president everyone should be getting behind. I hope Democrats will hear the word and start supporting this president as well.
Now, this is what Chuck Schumer, I know you were up watching The Late Show last night, Ronna. You were just glued to your TV. This is what Schumer said to Colbert. Let's watch.
He's not a racist. Well,
he's the least racist person.
The least racist person you'd ever speak to.
All time.
So I have a challenge for Donald Trump, okay? Actions speak louder than words. You want to just begin that long road back to proving you're not a racist, you're not bigoted. Support the bipartisan compromise that 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats have put on the floor. Everyone gave, and get the Dreamers safety here in America.
By the way, Ronna, that's just the first step toward Trump's redemption.
First, yeah.
Just give everything they want to the Gang of 6, and then he'll have a teeny baby step toward not being a racist. Thanks, Chuck.
Exactly. Well, I'm sure Chuck Schumer is the person the president's listening to right now. I'd say to Chuck Schumer, why don't you take some advice from yourself 20 years ago when you voted for a wall, when you said we needed to fix immigration, when you recognized that we had a border issue. Maybe Chuck Schumer should go revisit his past self and support some of the things that the president's putting on the table, that it's going to make our country safer.
Now, the Democrats keep saying, well, I got all these vacancies, retirements, the Republicans get wiped out in the House, you could lose the Senate and the House. I mean, they're going into the full wish list here, but the Republicans are toast. What's the real scoop, you think?
Well, the RNC's
don't sugarcoat it.
The RNC's raised record money. We know that the midterms of the first term of the presidency are usually brutal. We've been ready for it. We're in 22 states. We have the best data and ground game. We're ready to compete, and we have an economy that's doing well. We've got accomplishments to run on. We've got a president that's leading the way. I don't think it's going to be what the Democrats hope, but I want our base energized, so go ahead, worry, get out there, be engaged, volunteer. We have a national day of training on Saturday on the first anniversary of this inauguration. Get out. You cannot rest. This is going to be that type of election that we're going to have to work as hard as we can to keep majorities.
Okay, you know I always ask you this.
Yes, you do.
I want the comments most frequently made on the return envelopes when you ask for money, you send out mass mailings, people write do this, don't do this. What's the most common thing?
So I got my homework done today for you.
Good.
So we have had actual record low dollar fundraising in January.
Good, which is a good sign.
And the number one thing that people are saying on the phones and on the mail is we need to keep our majority in Congress because we need to support this president. So it's not even us soliciting donations. We actually have people calling because they're so concerned. We are beating 2016, 2014, any other election year in small dollar donations because our base is so
They want the wall built. They don't want to just do amnesty with getting nothing for it.
They support this president. They support his agenda.
Ronna, great to see you.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
coming in. And straight ahead, by the way, Senator Marco Rubio worked with the Democrats back in 2013 on an immigration bill, and that blew up. So what's changed? The Gang of Six, Gang of Eight? Rubio will tell us next. Once again, it's crunch time on Capitol Hill as lawmakers debate the fate of DACA and look for a way to keep the government open past a Friday midnight deadline. Senator Marco Rubio joins us now from Capitol Hill to discuss those and a lot of other issues. Thanks for joining us, Senator Rubio. Let's get right to it. The topic of the day is this immigration impasse once again. And for our viewers out there, are you more attuned to the current Durbin-Graham version of the immigration bill, or would it be closer to the Republicans who are called the more hard-line people like Tom Cotton or Senator Perdue?
Well, I don't know the details of the Graham-Durbin proposal other than what's been expressed in the media. I haven't seen those details. I can tell you what I believe in. I believe we do have to build a wall and improve our overall security, like at airports with entry, exit. I believe we should end the diversity lottery. I've been saying that for about 5 years. I believe that we should move toward a merit-based system of immigration. I believe that we should figure out a way, like the president has, to deal with people that find themselves, or many of the people that find themselves now under a DACA designation. And I think the big debate has been, how do you put all that together? And the way I view it is the president's number one priority is border security. The Democrats are insisting on DACA, and so in order to get it passed under this sort of framework that we're in now, each side is going to have to get something, but what else gets in there is what the debate has been about. And so I support ending the diversity lottery. I think we should admit people to the United States based on what they're going to contribute to the United States, and that's why I've long called for a merit-based system of immigration, irrespective of what country you're coming from. It shouldn't be country-based, it should be person-based.
Absolutely. And Senator, back in 2015, you gave a speech, or I guess back and forth with Hannity at CPAC, and you said, I've learned my lesson on immigration. And your point was that we have to do enforcement first before we can get to the other parts, you said. And that was obviously because of the Gang of Eight. That went down in flames. But the Gang of Eight, now it's a Gang of Six. And you have Lindsey Graham out there who today said we need different partners, willing partners in the White House. What of that? I mean, the White House is the White House. The president ran on the wall and enforcement, and he's willing to do DACA, too.
Well, just about anything we pass here, you're going to have him sign it. So that's the only partner at the end of the day that's going to matter, is what the president will sign. And by the way, the lesson I referred to in 2015 was more than just border security first. It was with a step-by-step approach versus a comprehensive one in which you try to do all these things together. It says, you're seeing now, you're only talking about 5 things and they can't put it together. So that's why I've long believed that you start with security first. That's something everybody should agree on. I don't know why anybody would argue that we shouldn't secure our border and enforce our immigration laws. And then you moved into modernization, which are things like making it merit-based or getting rid of the diversity lottery, basically going to a person-based immigration system as opposed to a country or family-based one.
Right, but
and when
Senator,
you've done
I'm
those
sorry
two
to
things,
interrupt,
you got to do
but they are doing amnesty at the same time. Not everybody, but they are doing 800,000 at the same time. So they're kind of doing a smaller version of what you guys tried to do in 2013, and that obviously didn't work out well, and the president's still willing to give in this circumstance.
Well, that's the point. I mean, everybody involved in this negotiation is saying, we understand that we're going to deal with the DACA situation, but you've got to do strong enforcement that's going to happen. And one of the differences between now and 2013 is you have someone at the White House that people trust is actually going to do it. That's a big dynamic shift from where we stood at this time in 2013, arguing about whether or not the enforcement would even happen. Even if we passed a law, people would argue that it wouldn't happen. So that's a difference.
Are you for the aunts and uncles and all of that to come in?
No. So I think keeping the nuclear family is one thing. I think allowing people to claim their parents or other relatives is not something that I'd support. And to me, that's part of moving away from the family-based system and towards the merit-based system.
Let's talk about what Jeff Flake is saying tomorrow. Another one of your colleagues. We've got a lot of charges. First, Trump's a racist, which I assume you don't agree with. That's what Durbin is saying. You don't agree with that, right?
I've never seen him say or do anything in front of me that leads me to believe that. People have a right to have whatever opinion they want, but I certainly have never viewed him that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you sit down in a room with someone one day and 2 days later say, well, he's a racist. But now Jeff Flake is giving a speech tomorrow where he's comparing Trump's treatment of the press to Joseph Stalin's. And of course, Stalin, the Great Purge, 20 million to 60 million deaths attributed to him. How do we get here, Senator?
Well, I think, look, I don't agree with everything the president does. I bet you don't agree with everything the president does. But one of the things that is happening is exaggeration. And just like the president does things from time to time that I don't agree with or would have done differently, I think the reaction to it is often very exaggerated. I haven't given the speech yet, so we'll see what he says tomorrow. But I don't think there's any comparison, not just between this president, but any American public figure with Joseph Stalin. But again, I don't know if that's what he's going to say in a speech. I mean, he hasn't given it yet.
Yeah, well, he's teased it. Let's talk about what you want to do to prevent foreign governments from interfering in American elections. You're teaming up with Chris Van Hollen, a Democrat, and what is your goal and what do you intend to do? So
there's clearly a Russia element to it because there's no doubt the Russians tried to interfere in our election. By the way, in my view, not simply to favor a candidate. That may have been what they felt like at the end, but for much of it, it was just to sow discord. But my bigger problem, we can't do about we can only deal with what's happened in the past prospectively, or looking back retroactively. But prospectively, the biggest threat to America's electoral system, and quite frankly, America at large, is not Russia. It's China. It's China's has basically infiltrated its way into all of our technologies across the supply chain. They make anything the Russians can do look like child's play, and that includes stealing secrets. That includes influencing individuals in American government through a lot of different methods, and that includes potentially interfering in an election. So I think the biggest threat moving forward is not the Russians, it's actually the Chinese. They are much larger with a lot more capability and a lot more money, and that's one of the things I thought about when getting involved in this legislation.
And any thoughts about this New York Times piece that just came out tonight that the administration is going to be reviewing possible plans to expand our military response with nuclear weapons to potential cyber attacks on water, communications, other essential services that would basically shut down the power grid, et cetera.
Yeah. So I promise you that there's going to be overreaction to that as well. Some of the same things I told you, exaggeration. You'll see headlines that say Trump wants nuclear attack because of hacking. That's not what this is about. By the way, this doctrine is actually not new. It's just been expanded and now, of course, been made public. The bigger thing about this is you talking about some of these attacks. We're talking about things that would knock planes out of the sky, kill patients in hospitals, wipe out millions of dollars from bank accounts, paralyze our electric grid. I mean, I'm talking about massive loss of life if the kinds of attacks that are being tried to anticipated here are the attacks that happen. People need to know ahead of time, if you do this, we're not going to have a series of town hall meetings to talk about why did this happen. This is what the response is going to be. Countries know what the response is going to be if they launch a nuclear attack against us. They need to know what that response is going to be if they launch a massive, life-threatening cyber or irregular attack, as I think a lot of countries that may not have a nuclear capability or may have a small nuclear capability have the ability to expand into this territory if we don't do a better job of protecting ourselves.
Senator Rubio, thanks so much for spending some time with us tonight. Hope to see you soon.
Thanks.
And a phone call between President Trump and the Chinese president turns very tense over a still growing, whopping trade imbalance. The details when John Bolton joins us next. Well, he promised it in the campaign, and now President Trump is signaling it may be time to finally fight back against China. A phone call with the Chinese President Xi reportedly got very testy when the president called the growing trade deficit with that country unsustainable. Let's get into that right now with Fox News contributor John Bolton. Ambassador Bolton, the October trade deficit with China was a record. I think it ended up being $48.7 billion. can't be sustained. Otherwise, we really can't get to where we need to be economically. Trump won't stand for it.
Look, the Chinese are pursuing a mercantilist foreign policy of what's best for China. They do it under the rubric of free trade in the World Trade Organization. It is not a free trade organization. And what Trump has been saying repeatedly is when China violates its commitments, we're going to do something about it. And these violations go across the board. I well remember back in 2000 when people were talking about bringing China in, they said they'll conform to international norms, they'll be more liberal, more open and whatnot. It hasn't happened. We've been taken advantage of, and now Trump is saying it's time to stop.
The following people: Bill Clinton, Alan Greenspan, George W. Bush, all heralding this as some great new openness with China. China still has hundreds of thousands in re-education camps, steal our intellectual property. Ambitious around the world. They want to be the hegemon, and we'll see where that goes. There was a big meeting in Vancouver today, 20 nations to deal with North Korea, an issue that you care about a lot. China and Russia were not present, and Chinese president very unhappy.
Yeah, look, I've heard different things. I've heard they were not invited or they were invited and didn't come. But the point is, it's like having a meeting with the elephants not in the room.
Fox to the hen house, maybe.
Yeah, this is feckless, I think, on the part of the State Department. You're not going to chit-chat or pressure North Korea into giving up nuclear weapons, a strategy that's failed for 25 years. So what this meeting achieved is hard to see. That's being kind.
I know you're interested in this Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, Nikki Haley, of course, the UN ambassador, your old job. Who has more mojo now with Trump, Tillerson or Haley, and why?
Well, I think the administration compromised on a decision about funding the UN agency that aids the Palestinians. This may sound like a kind of numbers-crunching budget dispute, but it goes really right to the heart of whether the administration will have a new policy in the Middle East or whether they're going to do the same things that have failed from the last 50 years. I think this is a critical debate. I wish we had more coverage of it, more debate about it in Congress, and it really is an effort by the Trump administration to turn that big aircraft carrier called the State Department around.
And giving money to the Palestinian Authority for humanitarian
well, nominally,
so forth?
Nominally it's both money to the UN and to the Palestinian Authority, where Abbas is slamming the United States over the weekend, and we turn around and give them $60 million. So it's hard to understand how you're going to make it clear.
It's a carrot stick. We're going to move the embassy to Jerusalem, but we're still engaged, and we still
this is a reflection of an administration still mired in debate, but I think they're trying to do the right thing if they can overcome the bureaucratic opposition.
Just because you and I love to talk about how our friends at the Wall Street Journal, and I have to go back to this on the trade issue for just a moment, because they had a big piece today about China and how we're going to escalate this into a big trade war, and they wrote, if it escalated far enough, a trade war could take down the entire global trading architecture. That may be indeed Mr. Trump's goal. That's the Journal today in a news story, Ambassador Bolton, not in a commentary.
Well, that's not a news story, obviously. Look, I'm a free trader myself, but if people undertake obligations and then don't comply with them, it's critical that you bring that out.
Are we a country or not?
Exactly. The State Department, the bureaucracy as a whole, just cannot stand saying other countries are in violation of their agreements. It's time to say it more often.
Ambassador Bolton, great to see you. And by the way, a Democrat who has known Donald Trump for almost half a century explains why everybody's getting it wrong about the president and race up next. Now, a Democrat who's known Donald Trump for more than 4 decades exposes what the left is trying to do with their absurd charges of racism against the president. Andy Stein joins us from New York, where he used to serve as city council president. Andy, it's great to see you. Donald Trump's a racist. Donald Trump's that's all we hear from the left. Donald Trump's a racist. You know him for 40-plus years. Tell us.
I know him since 1973, Laura, and it's ridiculous. If it wasn't so serious, it would be laughable. This guy doesn't have an ounce of racism in him. He judges people on the merits. You know, the first night he took over Mar-a-Lago, I think it was '85, he said to me, you know, it's crazy that they don't admit blacks in any of the fancy clubs in Palm Beach, and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to change that. I think he sued the city of Palm Beach because of it. In Haiti, there was a big storm in 1980. I raised a lot of medical supplies. I was borough president then in Manhattan, and we were going to send them to Haiti. But we didn't have a plane. I called Donald Trump, 1, 2, 3. He gave us a plane to take all the supplies over. The largest congregation in Queens, Reverend Flake's church, they needed some money for some of the poor parishioners. I called a lot of our liberal friends in Manhattan. They couldn't care less. And what happened was I called Donald Trump, and right away he wrote a check. You know, black unemployment is the lowest it's been since 1972, and Hispanic employment is the lowest it's been in 17 years. So this guy should get, the president should get a bigger black vote because he's done more for the African Americans than any president in recent history. That's for sure.
I think, Andy, that's what they're really afraid of. And The Atlantic just had a piece out a couple days ago where they noted that, in fact, his approval rating among African Americans has gone up since the election. Obviously, he didn't get a lot of support. He got more than Mitt Romney did in last time around, but he's improving. And I think that's the Democrats' worst nightmare. But the stories that you just told, those anecdotes, and you've known them for so long, I mean, that's what, we all have stories like that. And it's outrageous that this narrative is allowed to be cooked into the media and the attempt to brainwash the American public. And Andrew, just as his friend, we only about 15 seconds, final words.
It's the old Democratic playbook, Laura, which is ridiculous, which is racism, sexism. In the meantime, the president is providing real jobs for real people in the African American community.
Fantastic. Andrew Stein,
Thanks,
here on
Laura.
the Laura Ingraham Show. And by the way, we have a story you might have forgotten about Senator Cory Booker, who was slamming the DHS secretary today. Stay tuned. Okay, before we go, I want to get back to our old friend Cory Booker. Of course, squeezing drama from every scene is a default for him. Remember that imaginary friend whom then Newark Mayor Booker referenced repeatedly in his stump speeches dating back to the late 90s? Back in 2013, National Review recounted the bizarre item this way. T-Bone, the drug pusher, who the mayor has said threatened his life at one turn and sobbed on his shoulder the next, is a figment of his imagination, even though Booker has talked about him in highly emotional terms and in great detail. T-Bone? He was mayor of Newark, New Jersey, not of Natchez, Mississippi. Oh, come on. We're just messing with you, Senator Booker. We'd love for you to come on down to the Bureau, sit down with us, consider it an open invitation. And by the way, what? Oh, T-Bone's watching and says hi. Hasn't talked to you for a while. Misses you. That's it for us tonight. Miss Shannon, take it away.
We don't have any cool nicknames.